Hi there, and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now, I'll apologise now for there being a bit of a gap between this video and my last one. It has now actually been 2 weeks. I try to put out a video at least once a week. So these last couple of weeks have been a little bit snowed under with other bits and pieces going on. Now, as you'll see, I'm also reporting from my office again, as it is rather cold in the garage today. We had a -2 this morning, and yesterday morning was -4, so it's much more preferable to be in the office, which is well insulated and heated. So today's episode will really be an update of all sorts of bits and pieces that have been happening at Station Road, plus also some exciting new changes which are going to come about over possibly the next few months. So first up, let's get on with these big changes and some exciting times coming to Station Road. And this actually goes back to a video I put out at the end of last year, which is about the layout extension. Now, it's sat on the shelf for, well, half a year, simply because I couldn't do the extension without first removing all the stuff and junk and other bits and pieces that were in the way. So if we just switch over to here, and well, what do we have here? We have a rather large truck in our driveway with a shed slash cabin on the back. Now, you're probably all thinking, oh wow, he's actually gone and bought himself a purpose-built model railway shed. No, this is not actually what has happened. This is going to be our purpose-built storage unit so that I can get all the stuff out of the garage and therefore extend the layout. So you may wonder, well, why not put the layout in the shed? Now, I could, but it is really too small. This shed is only 2.4 by 3 meters long, and of course my layout is a bit bigger than that, and the intention is for it to get even bigger still. So that is the new storage shed, which will shift a lot of the stuff that's in the garage out into that shed so that I can extend the layout. Now, if we go back to the video that I put together at the end of last year, we'll just do a recap on the current layout and also what the plan was for the extension. So we'll just head back to a wee snippet from that video. So my plan is, in order to get rid of this, the most beneficial way of dealing with this is to extend the layout. So if we first of all eliminate the track that is to be changed, so now we have that greyed out, and then if we add in this, so you'll just see there from that wee snippet there, the planned extension. So the track isn't set in stone in terms of its final layout. This is just generally a rough sort of idea with the track layout. It's more so to sort of get the idea of the layout baseboards and dimensions are required. Now, here is the actual, well, a mock-up view that I did, and there is the stuff. As you can see in the background, there is a shelf with boxes, games, bikes, all sorts of stuff. Now, all of that is going into that shed, which I just showed you previously on the back of the truck. So there we have it, exciting times, and it will give you all an opportunity to see a layout build from the very beginning through to completion. So the next wee item that I'd actually like to look at is this reasonably recent purchase of a Bachmann BR Class 40 locomotive. Now, this is not a brand new item. It's I think from the early 2000s, this particular Bachmann model. I did buy it secondhand, and essentially, really, it was a bit of an impulse buy because it was being sold on a New Zealand auction website for what I thought was actually an extremely well valued price. So I thought, let's go for it. I didn't have a Class 40, and all reports was that it was running and everything was in shipshape order. Now, I guess this brings me sort of to topic about, do you buy secondhand or do you buy new? And a lot of actually the majority of my locomotives are actually secondhand, simply because I really just can't afford to purchase new locomotives. Generally, they're just so expensive. But with a little bit of sort of, research, you can actually pick up some reasonably good secondhand items, and even in New Zealand, funny enough. So this was bought, locally from somebody here in New Zealand, and it is DCC ready. It has the 8-pin socket. There's no running lights or anything like this. This was like one of Bachmann's earlier basic sort of models. But of course, when I went to fit a chip in it, a lot of things I discovered were not right about it. So unfortunately for the person who was selling this, they neglected to tell me that for a start, one of the bogie mounts had actually broken, and they'd sort of done a weird bodge repair by melting the plastic back together. There was screws that actually went through the wires when obviously it was the chassis was screwed back together. So there was a lot of things not right about it, and it really sort of I sort of thought, here we go. This probably, I was thinking, right, okay, this is the first purchase second-hand purchase I've made that just hasn't really worked out, and I might have wasted my money on it. But it really sort of led me to do a bit of a shout out actually for Bachmann and Bachmann Europe, because twice now I have I bought locomotives and parts are broken and so forth, and I have quite successfully and easily managed to access parts from Bachmann Europe and for them to ship them out to New Zealand for a small amount of money. And I just wanted to probably mention really that, in my own personal experience, that I've actually found Bachmann to be really onto it and very good. A, they have the parts. B, they ship them out. And although this particular part for this locomotive did take nearly 2 months to get here, that is, of course, all down to the COVID-19 saga. So the part that was in question was this tiny little bogie mount. This is the old one, which had snapped. And if you've got the part sheet from the locomotive, unfortunately this came in the original box and the original manual and part sheet, you can locate the number and simply email it through to Bachmann Europe, and they will respond. I give them a ring, give them my credit card details, and they will ship it out. And that was it. So it turned up the other day, and I was able to put this locomotive all back together, and now it is absolutely it's running perfectly. So yeah, that's I just sort of thought I'd like to sort of mention that. I don't know whether other people have good experiences with Bachmann, but I'd say that I have had really good experiences with them. Now, another interesting topic that I thought I'd bring up is you know, I spend quite a bit of time on local auction sites. So here in New Zealand, they have websites called Trade Me, and it's basically the equivalent of eBay. And but it is very much local. It's sort of like New Zealand, Australia only. Although I do see that there are businesses that sell stuff from the UK, America, Australia, and so forth on Trade Me. So yeah, but I actually spend quite a bit of time on Trade Me because you just never know. You just might come across something one day that might be of interest. And what did pop up the other day on Trade Me was a very curious item that I would have never ever expected to see here in New Zealand. And I thought, this might be a good prop for the Station Road Model Railway room. So I picked this up. Now, how on earth did this end up here in New Zealand? Now, I asked the seller whether he had any history of this, and unfortunately he didn't, because he bought it off somebody else some years previously. So I have no idea about the actual history of this. All I know, or what I've ascertained from a bit of research, is that this could be a railway guard's hat from the 70s and 80s. Now, we've got driver here, but this is actually a lapel badge that's been poked through the hat. So I'm assuming that that badge would have been worn actually, you know, on the uniform. And then the hat itself, whether this is a driver's hat or a guard's hat. But as far as I could see from doing some research online, this is a guard's hat, but I could be wrong. But what I'd really be interested to know is, can some of my viewers shed any light on this? It is a BR hat from the 70s, 80s, and there's no name in it. The label, unfortunately, is vanished. But yeah, and you know, are these still readily available, and so forth? Yeah, just a really curious item. So there we have that. So now the last wee item that I'd like to finish off with, and I actually posted some static photos up on my on the Station Road Facebook page the other day, but it's essentially sort of a continuation of the street scene from around the pub, the construction site, and the railway station. I've now managed to get some lighting hooked up, so we will just flick over to that and you can check out the lighting. So here we have some of the lighting now set up. So just to point out, the lighting is in no way meant to be prototypical lighting. So there is the lamp posts are not prototypical for the era. The pedestrian crossing beacons are not prototypical for the era, and also the station lights. So as I've always sort of mentioned and tried to maintain throughout, you know, the videos that I do for Station Road, is it's the suggestion of a realistic scene. And by suggestion, I mean that it is not absolutely accurate. It is not absolutely prototypical. It is not exactly the right height, the right size. It is a close approximation in order to essentially establish an atmosphere and a relatively convincing atmosphere. But that's as sort of far as it goes. So we have in here the pedestrian crossing now complete with the flashing beacons, and we have, you know, some of these. I've managed to buy some very, very intricate lights off local Trade Me website, and like for example this wall mounted light, and that's incredible. It's it's very nice detail on that light. These street lights I've had for a while. They've been sitting away in a drawer, and finally sort of got round to actually installing them. So we've also got some internal lighting in the station and so forth. Now, these lights in the station, in the buildings, they may appear like they're mega bright on the video. I'm just looking at the back of my screen here, and it looks like they're just crazy, insane bright, but in reality they're nowhere near as bright as what is coming out on the video. So that is how it's looking with the lighting. And then we've got the platform lights set up now. And once again, that light there looks like it's really bright in the shelter there, but in reality it doesn't look that bright. It's just simply the video. Now, I'm not actually filming this at night time. There is a little bit of daylight coming through, but yeah, I think it's come out really well. So that is the lighting now set up for the station area and the street scene and so forth. Now, you're probably wondering, how did I do the zebra crossing beacons? Now, I believe there probably is some sort of pre-assembled or ready to set up pedestrian beacons that you can probably buy. I think I have seen them before, but I've sort of done a kind of a custom job for those. Now, the lights themselves, I just bought them from a person off Trade Me, off the auction website here in New Zealand, but there's no brand name on them, so I wouldn't have a clue where he would have actually sourced them from, and I haven't actually seen them for a while. So it was just a straight black pole with a little white sort of ball light on the top. So I don't think they were really ever intended as pedestrian crossing lights in the first place. They were just simply a sort of like a lamppost, but with a round globe light on the top. I saw them and I thought, they could actually work quite well as pedestrian crossing beacons. So I painted the tops yellow, and then I painted white stripes down the pole. Now, the next thing was, well, how do I get them to flash? Because I know they went under sort of various different renditions over the years. Here in New Zealand, I think they're very similar to the UK ones, and they used to alternate from side to side of the street in terms of flashing. Whether they did that in the UK, I don't know. Then I think they went for a phase where they were just simply on all the time and didn't flash at all. And now here in New Zealand, I think they pretty much more or less got rid of all of the actual illuminated lights, and now it's just simply a fluorescent orange metal disc. But you know, I sort of thought, no, we're not doing that. And since we're in the sort of 60s, basically throughout the entire 60s decade, and maybe a smidgen into the 70s, that we'd go for the flashing globes. Now, of course, that raised the question of, how do I get them to flash? Now, here in New Zealand, there's a company, it's also, I think it's in Australia, it's an Australian company, I think. Well, at least it's in Australia and New Zealand. It's called JCar. Now, I don't know whether this company is elsewhere around the world, I'm not too sure, but basically it's your go-to electronic shop, and you can buy all manner of stuff and get busy with your soldering iron and all sorts of circuits. And JCar produce little kits, and I think, they're kind of almost like science kits in a way, and this is one here, and this is to operate alternating flashing LEDs. Now, it just comes with a circuit board with all the appropriate diodes, capacitors, resistors, and little chips and so forth, and you put it together yourself. Now, I'm pretty sure you could probably buy something ready-made and so forth, but I really actually quite enjoy making these little things, and also it's a good way of honing your soldering skills as well. So this is, it's pretty inexpensive. It's this is the wee circuit here which I put up. This is for another crossing, which I may add at a later date. And then of course you've got the 2 plugs there, which you can plug your lights into. Now I've modified this circuit to a degree, like where those 2 plugs are in the original circuit, you would that's where you'd actually put your LEDs, and they supply with this a green LED and a red LED, so you'd end up with this flashing green and red circuit. And also I'll change the capacitor, because basically this little piece here, that little capacitor there, that will essentially control the speed at which the flashing occurs. So with this kit, the capacitor that comes with it, it flashes quite sort of rapidly, but by increasing the capacitor that you install on the circuit, you can slow the flashing down. So that's what I've done, and this is basically how I've done the pedestrian crossing lights, and it works really well. So this is basically, I've got this operating from a 9-volt circuit, and it has the resistors already built in, so you're not going to be there's no chance of popping an LED, and that's how those beacons work. So there we have it. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know it's been a little bit of a mix and match of various sort of updates and so forth. So I thought I'd end this episode with just a small running session, and we'll see if we can get our Class 40 up on the layout and running around for its maiden journey. So take care, everyone, and look after yourselves out there, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.